the interpretation feature, please?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, thank you.
Yumi, can you remove the Korean at this time, if that's possible?
I believe it's been removed, Stephen.
Thank you.
And we are now live on Facebook, gentlemen.
Thank you. Can you see my slide? Just want to make sure.
Yes, we can see it, Stephen.
Okay, thank you very much. So good afternoon. Welcome to the meeting on MacArthur Park and Proposition 68. So today is Tuesday, November 10th, 2020. And this is a meeting hosted by the Department of Recreation and Parks in conjunction with Office of Councilmember Gil Cedillo. My name is Stephen Tran from the Department of Recreation and Parks, and I welcome you to the second meeting on the proposed project at MacArthur Park for Proposition 68 grant funding. You can follow, let me just go to the next slide. So today you can follow this meeting on Zoom as well as Facebook Live. If you go to the department's YouTube channel, you can also find the previous meeting that we did for MacArthur Park. And once after tonight, today's meeting will also be uploaded as well. So just to go through some meeting guidelines. First thing we would like you to do is just sign up. In your chat box, you will find a link to a sign-in sheet that Yumi has provided. It's very short and will help us keep track of attendance, which is important for this grant proposal. We will also have a question and answer session. So if you please wait until the presentation and we'll have your questions answered live. At the end of the meeting, we will also have a link in the chat box for a brief audience survey to learn more about how you experience this meeting. So to introduce today's panelists, we have Luis Gonzalez, the Deputy Director of Community Organization for Councilmember Gil Cedillo. We have Daryl Ford, the Superintendent of Department of Rec and Parks, Planning, Construction, and Maintenance. Bill Jones, who might show up, is our Chief Management Analyst at Rec and Parks Grants Administration. We have Yumi Songin, the Management Assistant for Rec and Parks Grants Administration. And I'm Stephen Tran, I'm a Senior Management Analyst at Rec and Parks Grants Administration. And we also have Jorge Rodas, our translator from Barbier. So to just go over tonight's agenda, we'll have an introduction from Council District 1, and then I will go over and introduce you to Prop 68. And then we'll have an overview of the proposed project to be presented by Daryl Ford. And then we'll have a question and answer at the end. So please, at any point, you can ask your questions and post it in the chat box, and we will review those questions and have them answered at the question and answer session. And this again will be followed by the survey, which will be provided in the chat box. So, Luis, would you like to present?
Yeah, thank you so much, Stephen. Good evening, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. I just would like to start by thanking the Los Angeles Department of Recreation and Parks for putting this together. Thank you, all of you that you are joining us tonight. I know that it's a weeknight. I know that you are tired from the whole day working or, being in distance learning with your kids. And we really appreciate you taking the time to be here with us and actually, give us feedback on everything that that is happening or that we're trying to do here in MacArthur Park. So all of you that are connected today, have your stakeholders. You either use the park, you have kids that go to a summer camp, or you just like to go into the park to use it for different reasons. And with this, it's just an opportunity for you to provide us with feedback. That's very important, and I can stress it enough. It's important for you to, if you have any idea of something that needs to happen there in MacArthur Park in terms of improvements, not to be shy and just type it in or just ask to, you raise your hand and bring it up to our attention, because this is the opportunity for you to make the changes that you want to see in the park. There is a lot of challenges. This year has been a very challenging year. And I think that with this application that RAP is trying to do is gonna be a good opportunity for to make those improvements that needs to happen there in the park. I would like to thank all of you again, for being here with us, and just make sure that you take all this information and that you let your neighbors know about it, let your groups know about it, and to continue with this conversation. We're gonna have 2 more sessions, and I think that Stephen is gonna explain a little bit about the other sessions that we're gonna have later this year and early next year. So hopefully, by the end of these sessions, we can have a better idea of what we need to do here in the park. So thank you so much for this. And again, Stephen and Daryl and the whole team and RAP, thank you for doing this, and I'm looking forward for the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Luis. I just would like to go back to the question and answer session. At the last meeting, we did have a few questions that were written in Spanish. So if you have questions and you're writing your questions in Spanish in the chat box, we will translate, the writing, and I will read it off in English to Jorge so that he can translate the answer in Spanish. So that's the procedure for anyone who wants to write in Spanish in the chat box. So for this meeting, we have certain objectives, and these slides may be familiar for those who have tuned in at the first meeting. Some of them will be repetitive to inform new attendants. So first objective we have is we want to inform you of this funding opportunity, which is for a park project, and the grant is Proposition 68. Secondly, we want to develop a project that is best suitable for this funding opportunity. And third, we want to learn about what your thoughts and ideas are on how to improve this project. So this is a very process-driven So we have today's meeting at 5, and our next meeting is on Saturday, November 14th at 10 a.m. And the way you tune in is by using the same Zoom link as you use for today's meeting. To give you an overview of Proposition 68, so the objective is to create new parks and new recreation opportunities in critically underserved communities. This law was passed in 2018 by 57% of the voters. And we are currently in the final round of this funding opportunity. Even though it says round 4, Proposition 68 only had 2 rounds, round 3 and 4. So for this last round, round 4, the total amount of funding available is $395 million. This is a competitive grant. So what that means is that we will work with you to put together a grant proposal, and it will go to the state, and the state will decide whether or not to provide funding. The maximum grant request allowed is $8.5 million. And the applications for this round are due March 12th, 2021. If we are provided with a grant, this project must be complete by March of 2025. So to go over the round 3 results, in round 3, the state received around 478 applications requesting $2.3 billion. And only about 255 million was actually available. The average grant request was 4.8 million, and the average grant amount was 4.1 million. So even though the maximum grant request is 8.5 million, the average grant amount was actually half that, 4.1 million. In round 3, the state received 478 applications, and 62 of them were awarded. And out of the 62 projects that were awarded, we had 28 to create new parks, 14 were park expansions, and 20 were renovations. So what type of projects are eligible under Prop 68? Basically, capital projects. So we're talking about playgrounds, athletic fields, pathways, restrooms, public art. And all applications have to include one of the following criteria, which means that it has the area around the park needs to have 3 acres or less of parkland for 1,000 people, and the median income has to be less than $56,982. For this particular park and community, the park's acres available for 1,000 people is 1.04 acres. So that is well less than the 3-acre maximum. So we qualify under that. We also qualify under the median household income, which is 32,448, which is well less than the 56,000 threshold. So Daryl, would you like to take over?
Sure. So, hi everyone. Again, my name is Daryl Ford. I am the Superintendent for Planning, Construction, and Maintenance here at the Department of Recreation and Parks. So here tonight to talk to you a little bit more about in detail about what we're proposing to apply for MacArthur Park under the Proposition 68 grant program. So just to start off, I think just more for informational purposes, but I think we're all very familiar with MacArthur Park. On the screen before you right now is just a little aerial view of MacArthur Park and a little bit on the existing park amenities that are there. We of course have the MacArthur Park Lake, our community center, the Levitt Pavilion on the north side of the park, a synthetic meadow. We have 2 playgrounds at MacArthur Park currently, several public restrooms, walking paths, benches, landscaping, picnic and seating areas, and of course, MacArthur Park has a lot of installations of public art. So just again, wanted to briefly run through all the various amenities we have at MacArthur Park, and then I'll go ahead and talk about some of the projects we're proposing to do, not as a part of the Prop 68 grant, but just more to give background to some other things that we're working on in the park. So this slide here just sort of shows 2 different projects that are currently planned and funded for MacArthur Park. And I'm just bringing them up in this context, just to give you guys an idea, everyone listening, of some of the different efforts that the city is currently working on the park. And I think this will help set the stage for some of the improvements that we're proposing to do under this grant. So just really briefly, there are 2 projects that are currently funded and moving forward at MacArthur Park. One is a playground replacement project. You'll see on the screen, this is the orange arrow points to one of the 2 playgrounds in MacArthur Park. This is what we call the lower playground. It's just to the west of the Recreation Center building. So currently we have funding available to replace this playground, and that process is moving forward through the design. So we do plan early next year to move forward with the replacement of that lower playground at MacArthur Park. So we'll be getting one of those playgrounds replaced with a brand new playground. The second project I just wanted to highlight for this conversation is the MacArthur Park Lake Rehabilitation Project. This is a very large project that the city recently received a significant amount of funding from the Measure W program for the rehabilitation of MacArthur Park Lake. That project is going to include the modernization of the existing storm drain infrastructure, as well as various improvements to the aesthetic character and the water quality of the lake and the adjacent park areas. So the MacArthur Park Lake Rehab Project is really focused on addressing the water quality issues in the lake, but also making improvements that'll make the lake aesthetically more pleasing and improve some of the landscaping and the pathways and the edges around the lake as well. So it's a comprehensive project designed to address the lake. So just wanted to briefly speak about those 2 projects, just again, keep communicating that we, the city, are moving forward with a lot of improvements in MacArthur Park, but we certainly know more that can be done. And that's really what we're here to talk about tonight. What else can we do at MacArthur Park and potentially with this Proposition 68 funding? So the next slide goes through the proposed scope of work for the grant. And again, as discussed earlier in this meeting, this is our idea. This is the concepts that we want to share with you for some of the things we think would be good to be funded underneath the Proposition 68 program, and that we think would make for a strong competitive project and make, again, some well-needed improvements to MacArthur Park. So the project scope has essentially 5 major items. One is the renovation of the Wilshire entry. So there, as you know, with MacArthur Park, we had recently done improvements to one of the entry corners from MacArthur Park. And we're proposing as a part of this application to improve the entry on the corner of Wilshire and Alvarado. So this would be essentially the corner, the southwest corner of the intersection. We'd like to make improvements there, including pathway improvements, landscaping improvements, seating improvements, just to make the whole entrance of the park at the corner of Wilshire and Alvarado more inviting for everyone. You may be familiar with the footprint of the old boathouse that's in that corner of the park, as well as the small parking lot that's located in that area. We would like to essentially redesign, re-landscape, reinvigorate that entire area with lighting, landscaping, and pathways, but to make it a much more engaging and open entry into the park. The second major item is the renovation of the southwest entry to the park. This is the entry that's located at the corner of Parkview Street and 7th Street. For that corner as well, we'd like to, again, do new pathways, new landscaping, new seating, new lighting, new irrigation. Again, really invigorating that corner of the park to make it a much more welcoming and open entry. As well, in that southwest corner of the park, we would like to add a new playground. So as I noted before, we currently have 2 playgrounds in MacArthur Park, one of which is to be renovated soon. And we'd like to add a new playground to this corner of the park because we think it would bring a lot of activity to this corner, families to this corner, and really activate the Park View and 7th corner of the park. So the next scope item that we'd like to do as well is we want to address the restrooms in MacArthur Park. So currently there's a restroom building on the east side of the park on Alvarado, midway between 6th Street and Wilshire. We'd like to replace that freestanding restroom with a new restroom building. We know that the restrooms at MacArthur Park are an issue that the community has made loud and clear. They'd like to have this addressed, and we know that it's an issue we'd like to use the state grant funding to be able to bring better restroom facilities there. So the first thing we are proposing in our scope would be the replacement of that restroom with a new restroom. And we'll talk a little bit tonight about one of the ideas we have for that. The last major scope item are the installation of 2 new restrooms in the park. So again, focusing on the southwest corner of the park at Parkview and 7th, along with the new entry, new pathways, new walking path, and a new playground, we'd like to add a brand new freestanding restroom in that corner of the park. We know there's no restrooms that are available on that side of the park. And again, with bringing in a new playground and a new entry, we think a new restroom facility on that side of the park would help serve all the park patrons on that side. Finally, we want to add an additional restroom near the Levitt Pavilion. So we know that the Levitt Pavilion currently has some restrooms that are attached to it, but we also know during events and a lot of times in the park, those restrooms are heavily used and we have to bring in portable restrooms. So acknowledging that that corner of the park by the Levitt Pavilion is very busy, always active, and again, during special events requires us to bring in portable restrooms, we'd like to have a more permanent solution on that side of the park as well. So we are proposing the installation of another restroom on that side of the park. And finally, just to wrap it up, we'd like to make landscaping and lighting improvements throughout the park, mainly focusing on these areas we've talked about today, the entrance areas and these new restroom projects, but we would like to budget as much as we can in that application as well to bring new landscaping and new lighting to the park. Lighting is a major focus for us in this grant application. We know how important it is to have a well-lit park and how making a park well-lit helps everyone feel safer in the park, more secure in the park. And on nights like this in the wintertime, where it's 5:30 and it's already dark out, having lights in the park would enable people to continue to enjoy it safely and securely while the park's still open. So we know how important that is. So we think the lighting item is a major item that we'd like to focus on too. So that's just a very short summary of the major elements of the project that we'd like to address. So the map that you're looking at now in front of you just highlights where in the park those individual elements are. Again, the freestanding restroom by the Levitt Pavilion is shown. We're kind of pointing in the general area in orange. So just to note, this is just conceptual. It's just kind of pointing to where these improvements would be. The replacement of the freestanding restroom on Alvarado. Again, the blue arrow points to that restroom if you're not familiar with it. The yellow arrow is pointing to the renovation of the Wilshire and Alvarado entrance. Again, this would be the southwest corner of that entry. We'd like to reinvigorate that again, much like we did with the corner of Alvarado in 7th when that project was done a few years ago. The green arrow is pointing to the southwest corner of the park. Again, the Parkview and 7th corner, where we'd like to do a renovation of that entry, like to add a new play area, and we'd like to add a new freestanding restroom. And then again, finally, we'd like to do landscaping and lighting improvements throughout the park. Again, focusing on these major areas, but as I said before, we know that the lighting situation at MacArthur Park is one we'd love to be able to get state funding to help us address. So tonight I want to focus on 2 different scope items. Just again, this is a discussion. It's just us sharing some thoughts and ideas we had for these scope elements with you tonight to get your feedback, your input. And again, your ideas, if you think that these are improvements that would make a lot of sense for MacArthur Park, or again, to give us suggestions of different things we'd like to do. So tonight I'd like to focus on a couple of those elements, and one of those being restrooms. So just again, just to reiterate for another time, there are some restroom improvements that we're proposing. Again, a freestanding restroom by the Levitt Pavilion, a replacement of the existing freestanding restroom on Alvarado, and another freestanding restroom on the southwest corner of the park, where we're proposing to make a series of improvements. So our idea here is that, again, we know that the restroom situation in MacArthur Park is in need of an upgrade. So what we'd like to talk to you a little bit about tonight is one solution that we've hit on, that we've used in another park in our city, in North Hollywood Park, and that we are starting to roll out in additional parks. So the next slide will show you One of the things that we had, one of the ideas, and again, one of the solutions that we've been using in other areas and that we think may be a very good option to explore for MacArthur Park. So again, this is just for discussion purposes, wanted to bring it up here in this meeting and talk about it and just share sort of our thoughts on this as a potential solution to the park. So what you're looking at here is a picture of an Exeloo automated restroom. So this Exeloo automated restroom is one that we've installed here in the city of Los Angeles, actually in North Hollywood Park. We installed this Exeloo automated restroom in August of 2019. So we've had a little over a year's worth of experience with this restroom. And I'll talk a little bit about what's very unique about this restroom. So just briefly, the unit that you're looking at here, it provides 2 single occupancy restrooms. So again, just a single person in those restrooms. And of course, like any restroom, they'll be fully ADA compliant, have baby changing stations. But essentially, this model here that you're seeing shows 2 single occupancy restrooms. The restroom is automated. I'll talk a little bit more about that. It's a restroom that is self-cleaning. It's a restroom where the doors automatically open and close. And it's a restroom that's provided with a timer to make sure no one is in the restroom for too long. And we can talk a little bit about how that works. Finally, one of the other major features about this restroom is it provides us with data. It's connected to the internet and it provides us with updated reports about usage. It lets us know immediately if it has an issue, say if there's a maintenance problem there, the system will tell us right away what needs to be fixed or what's showing an error. And it'll also tell us if the unit is out of service for some reason, or if the unit is being occupied for too long. So again, a lot of the issues that are around our restrooms sometimes are about folks misusing them, just to be frank, right? So the one of the good features of the Exeloo automated restroom is it lets us know in real time if there is an issue with the unit. So I think that'll help a lot, or could help a lot in a park with giving us updated information about how that's being used. And then just finally highlighting here that we are working on installing these restrooms at other locations. So we do have the one in North Hollywood, and we're currently moving forward in multiple parks to install these new restrooms. So as we were discussing a potential scope for this project, we thought that the Exeloo might be a very good solution for us to investigate. I did just want to highlight for you that the picture there is just one look of the model. It can be customized. It comes in different looks, but that's the look of the one we have in North Hollywood. And again, very early in the conversation and preliminary, but just wanted to share with you our thoughts about the Exeloo. So just a little bit more on the Exeloo in the next slide, just to share with you again some of the features of it and why we think it's a good potential solution for a park. So again, the Exeloo, what you're looking at here is just sort of a printout of a report that the Exeloo prepares for us. It tells us, how often it's being used. It tells us what time of the day it has, how it's being used. So we know like what are the peak times that the Exeloo is in service. It gives us data on everything that's happening in the restroom. It tells us essentially how long people are waiting to use it. It gives us a lot of very good data that helps us understand what's going on with the restroom unit. So again, above and beyond its automated capabilities, it gives the city and the department a lot of data that helps us understand how well we're doing at serving folks at the park. So it's a very powerful system. Like I said, we have some experience with over a year now in North Hollywood, and we think will be great to run out in other parks. So again, just focusing on some of the major highlights here is that we know the Exeloo is a restroom that can serve a variety of user groups. So for example, in North Hollywood Park, we're able to see as the Exeloo gets different levels of service depending on whether or not there's programming in the park or recreation in the park. Obviously with COVID, there hasn't been a lot of activity for recreational programming, but pre-COVID, Exeloo was able to tell us and show us kind of those peak times that the unit was in service during the park. So it's, again, very powerful to have that data at your hands, and really helps the department understand what the usage of the restroom unit and when we need to service it. It provides hygienic and accessible restrooms for all users. So again, the Exeloo is designed to have single occupancy restrooms that, again, the restroom unit is self-cleaning. So for an example, if you go in and you use the unit, as you leave the unit, you wash your hands, you leave the unit closes the door behind you, but the unit's on a schedule to clean itself. So it washes itself down on a regular schedule. So the unit is designed to clean itself. And that's one of the most powerful functions of that, because that helps us to maximize our own maintenance resources. So it's very important, because we know, of course, everyone likes to have a clean restroom. And given that the Exeloo helps to try and solve that problem. Now, to be clear, obviously there may be times or incidents where staff needs to go in there and provide it with an extra cleaning on a regular basis. That does happen for any restroom and does happen for Exos as well, but it does regularly schedule itself to wash itself down. So it does clean itself. And we think that'll help, reduce issues with potential environmental contamination and just, again, provide a clean, hygienic environment for everybody. It prevents residency in the facilities. So just to be very frank, the XLU can be set with a timer. And currently we have ours in North Hollywood set for it to set off an alarm if the door has been closed for 10 minutes. So it's a very audible and loud alarm. So it's an alarm that will certainly convince people if they are in the restroom for over 10 minutes to move along. It does warn you in advance, but again, it's designed to prevent people from staying in the restroom too long. So it comes with that feature. And like I said before, we think understanding that there are restrooms in this park that certainly could use a feature like this to prevent people from camping out in them. So it does come again with an alarm that opens the door after 10 minutes of use to tell people to sort of finish their business and move on. And then finally, like I noted before, it helps us manage our resources effectively. So given that the XLU is a self-cleaning automated restroom, it helps us understand when it's busy, when it's dirty, when it needs to be repaired, and it helps us prioritize the use of maintenance resources. So again, just wanted to bring that up tonight as a potential option that we think may be a good solution for MacArthur Park for the replacement of the restroom in Alvarado and potentially for the 2 new restrooms that we're proposing. We think the XLU would be a potential good solution for that. Doesn't mean that that has to be what the option is, but again, tonight's about having a discussion and us sharing with you our thoughts and our ideas for MacArthur Park. So that's the restrooms, which is one of the 2 items we wanted to focus on tonight. The next item I wanted to focus on for tonight's meeting is the new playground. So again, we are proposing to add a new playground in the southwest corner of the park. So what I wanted to share with you tonight are some very, and I want to be clear, very conceptual ideas for what that playground could look like or feel like, and just sort of so that we have a conversation about what we feel that space can accommodate and some of the different things that we can do for playgrounds. But tonight's to talk a little bit about what a playground could look like in that area. So on the next slide, I just want to share with you a very conceptual playground rendering. Now, as background, just so you know, we in the city of Los Angeles, we work with a lot of great playground firms and vendors who work with us to help us design and lay out playgrounds. So we have been interested in adding a playground in this corner of the park for some time, and working with one of our vendors, they help us prepare some of the images that you'll see tonight, just again, showing you conceptually what a playground could look like for MacArthur Park. So this is a conceptual image here on the screen tonight that one of our vendors prepared for us, showing what a new playground could look like in that corner. So just again, remember that it's just 100% conceptual. It's a kind of a design layout for what a playground could look like. You'll notice, of course, it's a rendering. So a lot of the trees are in this corner and the kind of unique geography aren't depicted in precise detail, but you can see kind of the lake behind the picture and the buildings beyond that, just again, to give you some level of perspective. But again, it's just a conceptual rendering. It's not as if we're proposing to remove all the trees in this corner. It's just designed to show you what the space looks like. But we can I'll go through a few more slides showing you just conceptually what this particular playground looks like, but really what we're trying to spark is a discussion, because we work with a number of playground vendors. They can provide us playgrounds in a variety of configurations with a variety of different kinds of elements and amenities, styles, themes. The playground you're going to see tonight has a very particular theme for MacArthur Park, but we do work with a variety of vendors that can give us a lot of different themes. And that's what this discussion is about. If there is in fact support for doing a playground in this corner, these are the kind of details that as a project moves forward, if it's funded, we can work with the community to talk about sort of what do you want to see your playground have? What kind of features do you like? But this is just, again, one concept, completely conceptual of a rendering to show you some space and sort of one theme that we thought was an interesting theme for MacArthur Park. So moving forward to the next slide, again, this is just an overhead view to give you an idea aerially kind of how this potential playground would be laid out. So we were looking at a playground where we do kind of our standard configuration where we have a playground for the big kids, a 5 to 12 playground on one side, and then some play features for the little kids on the other side, our 2 to 5. You'll see some more images here about the theme, but I wanted to share this one with you to show you kind of an idea that we're thinking of sort of two distinct play spaces. Again, they don't have to look like this. This isn't a final theme or anything else, but our idea was that in this corner of the park, it may be good to have some distinct separation for where the playground could potentially be. Moving forward, it's just another image of this particular concept for the playground. And I just want to linger here for a moment and kind of explain what we're looking at. So if you're, again, and as everyone's familiar with the park, you can see in this image the artwork that we have there, those little orange balls that are in the corner of the park. You can kind of see them in the background here. And again, that's kind of designed to give you, with a clock, if everyone's familiar with what the clock is, but designed to give you some perspective kind of like as to how you're looking in the from where the playground would be. But what we, this theme that's in front of you, and again, it's just a theme. And like I said before, the vendors can provide a variety of themes. What you see here is a kind of a theme looking back at understanding the history of MacArthur Park as being named for General Douglas MacArthur and everything that he did during the Second World War. This theme has sort of a military theme. You can see it has a little bit of a ship, like a military boat right there, the 63 on it. But it's a playground, right? It's for climbing, it's for hiding, it's for, you can see in here some netting. A lot of different elements can be included in the playground, but as a theme for this one, we were thinking about like a theme that really talks about the heritage of MacArthur Park to the name MacArthur Park. But again, discussion purposes only, lots of different themes that a playground could have, but just wanted to show you some ideas that the vendor came up with us looking at this potential concept. So moving forward again to the next slide, just highlights some more about this potential theme. And here, just some more images so you can see kind of what this theme would look like. If you look at the image on the right where the playground itself is, you can see sort of kind of like a boat theme in the water. You see the blue kind of surfacing, and then the kind of the beach area that's in brown and the green for the grass. Just again, kind of a fun little theme of a military boat coming up to the beach, and then the playground itself being on the beach. Themes, ideas, these are all the kind of things that we can work to finalize, but we really just kind of put this one together thinking about the history of the park. And then on the left side of the screen, you see one of those small play areas that I'd showed in the first diagram, that they're set up as kind of little airplanes. Again, just keeping within the theme of the General Douglas MacArthur. This is one kind of thing we can do, but this is really to show you that we work with so many vendors who can provide so many unique types of designs. So please don't look at this and say, they settled on this theme. This is really to spark a conversation about the unique things that we can do if we do a new playground in this corner of the park, some of the unique elements that we can include. Just two more slides here on the playground, and then we'll kind of circle back for questions and open it up for that. So again, just some more renderings, again, kind of trying to show you on the right what those little airplanes would look like for the kids to climb in and play on and jump off, just sort of, again, a theme. But these are, again, are things that the vendor can do. And then on the left, another image of the playground, just showing some of the different unique climbing elements that we can do and different kinds of themes and different spinners and different climbers. But again, all ideas just share with you tonight to kind of show you spatially the kind of things that could fit in the park, the kind of things that, the kind of themes that a vendor can do, and the kind of space that it takes up. And then just the final slide here tonight, again, just focusing on the playground for this corner is just to kind of show you spatially what that theme I just shared with you would look like. So on the left side of the screen is just a highlighted, just a kind of a bird's eye view of potentially what a layout for that could look like. So as you know, for the corner of 7th and Parkview, which is the corner we're talking about, potentially what the playground could be. And then on the right side of the screen is just a zoom in. It's just it's a wider image of a map. And again, at the top right of the screen is actually the corner of 7th and Parkview. So you can see on that entry of the park, just again, a very spatial, very preliminary layout, just kind of giving you an idea of the kinds of things and spaces that could fit in a kind of room that a playground would take in that area. So just to hit on it again, conceptual ideas, conceptual thoughts, sharing it tonight with you guys so you can see some of the different ideas, themes, and different elements that could be included in a potential playground design. And then again, spatially, kind of how those could fit within the current walking path pattern in that corner of the park. But ultimately, if the project were to move forward, we of course would look at the layout of that area and those pathways and everything else to make a coherent space. But just wanted to start by showing you and sharing with you some ideas for the playground. So that's those are the two items we wanted to focus on for tonight. Again, we're here to talk about the entirety of the project, of course, and take your thoughts, your ideas, get your input and everything else. I just wanted to say, if I didn't say at the beginning, to thank you again for being here tonight. And I know it is again a weekday, and we do thank you for taking time out to participate in the meeting and give us your input on this potential project. So we're here for any questions you may have, and hopefully we can give you some answers, and looking forward to a good discussion.
Thank you, Harold. I'm sorry. Thank you, Daryl. So I just want to remind you that if you have not, signed in yet, please go back to the, beginning of the chat box and please sign in to help us with this grant proposal. So I'm going to go through some of the questions that were asked. Is there a link available for Facebook Live? We will provide that. Okay, so that was provided. So yes, this will be recorded automatically. So I went through the entire chat box. Does anybody have any questions on the grant or on the actual project proposal that Daryl had presented to you tonight? We'll wait a few minutes for more questions. So how much is the grant for? So the maximum that we can apply for this park is $8.5 million. So I'm not able to see the charts sent. Okay. If you would like, you can ask your question again.
Hey, Stephen, I was just going to chime in on that, the conversation about the grant maximum amount, just to provide a little bit more detail. So as Stephen had noted, we can apply for a total of $8.5 million for the project. We, as a part of this grant, will develop a budget for the project, but that budget will depend on these types of meetings and input from the community as to some of the final elements you'd like to see as a part of the project. So as we start to finalize some of the scope items and get your input, we at the city will work to develop that budget and to make sure that that budget can fit within $8.5 million. So that's part of why we're having these conversations, so that we make sure that we at the city are on the right track for the project scope. So as we start to develop the budget, that it's a budget that it's a project we can accomplish within that budget.
Thank you, Daryl. So we have one question in Spanish. If you can, Yumi, if you can just translate that and provide that in English.
Just one moment.
So the question, would the $8.5 million cover all of these additions? So Daryl just went over the budget. So once we develop this project, whatever it will be asked for by the state will be included in the budget, and depending what the items are, yes, it would have to be, at a maximum $8.5 million.
Right, and the question from Petronilla Paxtor reads as follows. Good afternoon. It is the first time that I am in this meeting. What will happen with the homeless and with the people who sell there?
So Daryl, I'll just start out by saying that this particular presentation is about a proposal for a grant for a grant from the state. So whatever is being proposed here is a capital project, which would not include social services or any other services that would be involved with homelessness. But Daryl can go over how the infrastructure and what is being proposed can impact homelessness.
Hi again. Yes, it's Daryl Ford here. So as Stephen noted, this grant is for capital improvements only. And we can only fund this grant, the actual improvements into the park. But as discussed earlier in this presentation, that's a lot of the reason why we are looking at some of the elements we are for this grant, particularly the improvements to the restrooms, so that we do know the restrooms are heavily used by all park users, including the unhoused at the park, which is why we had shared tonight one of the potential solutions, which would be the Exclude self-cleaning restroom, which would help address some issues that may happen from people staying too long in the restrooms or misusing them. So that's one of the ideas we have that would help make the restrooms more usable for everybody in the park, be they there for recreation programs or unhoused or whatever the situation may be. But that's why we're looking at some of these capital improvements that the state can fund to help us with some of that, some of those issues that are caused by all the users in the park.
Next question is, there are so many areas of the park that need improvements, fixing, renovation. Curious to know if the new buildings have a better chance of getting funding rather than focusing on fixing the current infrastructures and buildings. Well,
Sure.
I can. Oh,
go ahead, Stephen.
Yes. In terms of the grant, this project would qualify as a renovation project, meaning that within the scheme of funding, the state has prioritized, brand new parks as being the priority for funding, and the next tier is essentially, the expansion of parks, which would not be the case here. So this is a renovation project, regardless of whether we add a building or renovate a building. So point-wise, that would be the same according to the state.
Yeah, and this is Daryl again. I'll just chime in sort of that question. So as I said earlier in the presentation, we 100% recognize that the park needs a lot of upgrades and improvements. Again, completely agree that there are many upgrades we can make across the park. What we are trying to do with this grant, and again, talk a little bit about some of the other efforts that are happening that are already funded for other improvements in the park at the lake and at the other playground that's located just to the west of the community center building. But what we're trying to focus on, or what we think we're trying to focus on, or for this grant, is developing some grant elements, some scope elements that we can design, deliver, and implement within the time frame of the grant. So if we're successful in being awarded these funds, we're only going to have a few years to be able to implement them. So what we wanted to do was to identify areas of the park where we think we could make well-needed improvements, but make them in an area that are concentrated so that we don't have a large project where we're sprawling around doing improvements all across the park. But if we can focus our attention on just a few areas in the park. So again, much like we did with the corner of 7th and Alvarado, when we made targeted improvements in that area, this idea would be to continue to make targeted investments and improvements, again, up to a maximum of $8.5 million. So that's part of our strategy of focusing on a few select areas, bringing a few additional recreation improvements in the park, and also addressing some of those major issues that we all know of in the park, lighting and the restroom situation. So that's how we came up with these scope items. But again, this meeting's about us understanding from you, the community and the people who live there and use the park the most. Are there other things in the park that you would think that you'd like us to investigate as potential scope items? Do you think the items that we've selected or we're identified for potentially for this grant are the right items? So any input you have about that would be wonderful. And again, particularly if there are other major infrastructural challenges across the park that you think we've missed and that you think you'd like us to investigate, if they would make sense for this application, that's what we're here for tonight, to get your input.
Thank you. If someone is spending too much time in the bathrooms, who is called to intervene?
So speaking about the XLU, what actually just happens is the door opens. So the warning alarm, again, the one we have in North Hollywood set for 10 minutes. So what'll happen is it gives you a very kind alarm before you've reached your 10 minutes so you can finish your business in the bathroom. And once that 10-minute time starts, a very loud, very piercing alarm will go off and the door will open. So the XLU lets us know through its automated systems when that's happened, when the alarm's gone off and the door had to open automatically. So that's what it'll do. The unit will let us know that. But to be very frank, it's a very loud alarm. If you ever have the opportunity to go to North Hollywood and spend 10 minutes waiting for the alarm to go off, it's very noticeable and very unpleasant. So hopefully it'll be a deterrent from anyone continuing to camp out in there. But that's what the unit will do automatically. And again, it'll give us a notice that the door is open. And when the person who's in that restroom leaves, the door closes and the alarm will stop. So we'll know that they left. But that's what the XLU, we think, is an element that, again, to help with potential issues of people staying too long in the bathroom, it's designed to have the 10-minute timer on it, doors opening, and a piercing alarm to let you know your time is up.
Thank you. So, hello, thank you for this reunion. I think the improvements of restrooms and playgrounds are amazing. I hope that these efforts increase a sense of community connection and safety at the park. However, I want to ask if there are other projects that these state funds can be utilized for. Are there any efforts aimed at minimizing substance use, smoking at MacArthur Park, since that is a huge concern for community members? Well, just to start out, this again, this is a capital project grant. So we are essentially submitting a project proposal that we will be, eliciting feedback from the community. And once we go through that whole, these meetings go through the process of integrating, your suggestions to the best of our abilities. That is what we will propose to the state. Again, this is as Daryl has, referred to earlier, the lighting, the EXO, restrooms are essentially proposed to address some of the issues that you are concerned about. And Daryl, would you like to just say anything? Or
I mean, again, yeah, this grant is focused on capital improvements. So we are aware that there are other activities happening in the park, and those are just things that need to be handled as they normally would, by calling LAPD if that's the particular issue for enforcement of those rules. But yeah, this is focused on bringing some improvements to the park, capital improvements. We can't fund, ranger activities or additional staffing for the park. It's to kind of address some of the issues that are coming from the improvements that we have there and how we can make those improvements better for everyone. And hopefully through those efforts, lighting and restrooms and other things, try to minimize some of this other activities. So, and key thing here, I think always is any park, the more active it is with folks playing games, sitting down, having picnics, spending time with their family, feeling safe and comfortable at the park, activity shines a light on anything else happening in the park. And we feel that things we can do to bring more families, more activity, people feeling more safe, more comfortable, more welcome in the park we think will have a snowball effect and really help improve that. I mean, it's not a rosy view of that's going to be all the solutions to all the problems, but we think a targeted capital investment in the park would bring well-needed improvements and certainly hopefully help bring activity and more eyeballs and more input, more activity in the park.
Thank you. So assuming the city does not receive the full 8 million, what will be cut from the proposal? So once we submit an application, the state will review the application and will decide, will, generally have one of their officers come by and do a site review, and the state will, will say, we are going to fund it or we are not going to fund it. So this is the last round of Prop 68. And that means that there is no future round under Prop 68. So we have this one chance under this funding opportunity to submit a proposal. Now, just also keep in mind that we have other grant funding available. So if in case Prop 68 does not come through and we don't get the grant, then we are always there's always other funding available to essentially that we can apply for that will provide funding for some of these some of these items and amenities. The state has basically told us that it is funding wise an all or nothing, which means that as you in one of my previous slides, you saw that even though the maximum amount of grant funding that we can apply for is 8.5 million, the average grant that was provided was 4 million. So in essence, what the state is saying is that if we are going to put forward, a grant proposal, it has to be strong, and the state will fund either all of it or nothing. The state will not provide funding for a partial, you know, of a part of the request. It's either the whole thing or nothing. I hope that sort of answers your question. So that was the last question. Is there any other question? We'll just wait here for a couple more minutes if you have any. We will have another meeting next Saturday at 10. So if you have questions that just popped up while you were while after this meeting and in between this meeting and the next meeting, you can certainly come back and have those questions answered.
Hey, Stephen, this is Daryl. I just wanted to make a note that I think I saw some additional questions maybe in the chat box, but not in the Q&A. And I just wanted to confirm if we were able to get to the questions that might have been in the chat box.
Okay.
Of the Zoom meeting itself.
The chat box, okay.
I just want to make sure we didn't miss anyone.
Oh yeah, thank you very much. Sorry.
Stephen, I'm also seeing some questions on Facebook Live that I'm not sure you would like to address, but there are some questions coming in.
Please do. Before you do that, let me just answer the question from the chat box. Okay. So Yumi, can you see my screen? This from LG Steel 06?
Yes, and I believe that is just a comment. I hope you can help make it a different park. Great. Essentially is the gist of the message.
Okay. And then there's one from the next one.
From MUKT, I believe it says, how do you plan on cleaning the water in the parking lot? And how do you plan on controlling the entry and cleanliness in the bathrooms?
This is Daryl. I can start with the cleanliness of the bathroom. So again, if we do go with an Xflow automated restroom, the restroom cleans itself on an automatic schedule. It does still need to be cleaned by staff, so that automatic cleaning of the restroom is it's not the only thing that needs to be done. It does still need to be, people still need to go in there and do regular cleanings of it. but essentially the restroom cleans itself regularly after usage. So that's one. And again, that's obviously fundamentally different than a standard restroom that is only cleaned by staff. This restroom being automated would be more hygienic in the sense that it would essentially clean itself regularly as it's receiving heavy usage. But it does still need folks to actually go there and service the unit. So it's great to have an automated feature there to help with that, but it does not do it all by itself. I just don't want to give that impression. And then the comment about I think it was water in the parking lot. I can make a note of that. If we're talking about the parking lot that's at the corner of Alvarado and Wilshire, that little kind of driveway and parking area, we would propose as a part of this project to remove most, if not all of that, and reinvigorate that whole corner. So if we're talking about that parking area, that's why we really want to focus on that. But if there's another parking area, maybe the one over by the community center or another one, just if you can maybe expand your comment, just point out for us exactly which areas you're keying on, and we can make sure to take a look at that. So thanks.
Next question, I would like to offer ideas for the following improvements. Synthetic lawn at the Levitt, non-automated toilets, concern about oversight maintenance, sound of the alarm interrupting the overall environment power source. Okay. Is there a cost benefit analysis for non-automated toilets versus automated? Are any of the improvements going to be eco-friendly or utilize solar power? Okay. So let's just address one question at a time. So the first one is synthetic lawn at the Levitt.
Yeah, I think it was a comment that came up in our last meeting as a good suggestion, something to look at.
Okay.
There were some improvements recently made over by the Levitt Pavilion, but we can certainly see if that's a scope element that could be folded into the grant. But yes, that was I think we got that suggestion at the last meeting as well.
Okay. So we'll note that. Non-automated toilets concerned about oversight, maintenance, sound of the alarm interrupting the overall environment power source. Okay.
Well, just again on the automated restrooms, that's what this conversation is about. So this is a potential solution that we think would help to address a variety of different things that happen, particularly with people, the cleanliness and hygiene, the cleanliness of the restrooms. We think this is a solution that would help with that, and the idea that it would help keep people from, camping out in the restrooms. Just to be very frank, so. It is a potential solution. If there's not support in the community for an automated restroom, we can look at a traditional restroom like the one we already have on Alvarado between 6th and Wilshire. But that was the idea, was that an automated restroom might provide the best of both worlds, more cleanliness, a little bit more security, and again, a way to prevent people from staying in the space for too long. And again, just to the comment about the alarm, yes, again, I mean, like with many alarms, I think maybe a lot of us live in areas where people's car alarms go off or other alarms that go off. I mean, that is an issue. If people are consistently trying to camp out in the restroom, that may be something that happens. But again, we have only the one in North Hollywood. We continue to deploy these things. It's certainly an issue that can be discussed more as they go out, but it's a great point to bring up. I think just again, I know I'm sharing this from the fact that I have experienced it in the other restroom is for testing it out. It's a very piercing alarm. So people tend to move on very quickly. The door closes, the alarm goes, it turns itself off. So certainly understand that it could potentially interrupt events that are going on in the park and just be disruptive, from a noise perspective. But those are some of the benefits and some of the downsides to it. It's good. It's a good point to bring up.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
There are costs. I'm sorry, Daryl, you were gonna.
No, I just was gonna, I guess, answer the last two. I think you said there was about a cost benefit analysis of the restroom. So
Right.
just in general, an excellent automated restroom does cost more than if we were going to potentially build a restroom, design and build a restroom, a unique one from scratch. So these units do potentially cost more. Again, they come with features that we will not get in a restroom that we design or a different type of prefabricated restroom. But that's just, they have a higher initial investment cost, if you want to put it that way. But we believe that the savings you see over time from reduced maintenance in the facility, and I guess even more importantly, the fact that the restrooms will be cleaner more often and more hygienic more often and help keep the camping out. Those are sort of the issues on the benefit side of it, but it does come with a higher capital cost than some of our other ones. But again, we're proposing it. It's an idea. It's a conversation about having a solution, but in our minds, that's sort of the cost benefit analysis. A little bit more investment on the front end, but we think some of the benefits you see from those additional elements would be of help. And then I think lastly, there was a conversation about eco-friendly or solar power, right?
Yes.
Okay, and then just, again, we can look more at that. Obviously, not obviously, but if we are to install new lighting in the park, it would all be LED lighting. So obviously we would use lighting that would be directional, so be in the park and not sort of bleeding out into the environment, but it would be lighting that would be LED lighting, so the most efficient lighting that we can provide. We are not proposing elements with solar power, just as a sort of a editorial on that. The challenges with solar power installations, particularly for lights, if that's the case, is they can solar panels can be broken, they can be vandalized and damaged, and they require intensive cleaning. So they do require a regular cleaning of those solar panels in order to make sure they're still efficient. So one of the things that we're always trying to look at for all of our improvements are ways that we can decrease our maintenance costs. And unfortunately, just because some of those panels do have higher costs because we need to continuously clean them and make sure they're operating efficiently and they can be damaged, we do look at other things like LED light solutions because we are always keeping in mind the city's budget, the city's maintenance resources, and we try to focus on improvements that we believe are cost effective and also are easier for our staff to maintain, because we know there's nothing worse than brand new wonderful improvements in a park that the city can't maintain, and months after they're installed, they're already dilapidated or being too heavily used. We want to make sure that if we are proposing improvements, installing improvements, they're improvements that we think we can maintain even given our current budget situation.
Next question is, what is the budget plan capacity for sustained and long-term maintenance, since what is there currently is a challenge to keep things clean now?
Again, I think just to kind of piggyback on the answer I just gave, that's some of the idea around why you would do an XLO automated restroom. It would reduce the amount of time that staff needs to spend addressing the restroom and cleaning the restroom. Again, we have a little bit over a year experience with the one in North Hollywood, and we're looking to deploy it in other locations. We think it's will likely have a higher survivability. There's less fixtures inside of the XLO to break or misuse. So we think, again, it might be a good solution in the long term to help keep down our maintenance costs by changing out those restrooms with facilities that will be potentially a little bit more durable and longer lasting.
What about lighting in the tunnels?
It's something we can look at. We were thinking for this project about the lighting in and around the different entryways and the new improvements, but certainly something we can look at.
Okay. What about lighting to encourage usage from the metro to the rest of the park?
Only answer there is really just, I think, to focus back on the grant. The Proposition 68 funds can only be used in improvements inside of the park. I don't know if this is the crux of the question, but if there are improvements that can be made within the park boundaries that fit within the grant scope and amount, those are the types of improvements we can do. But if the idea is for lighting that's in the public right of way or along the streets, that cannot be paid for with this grant. So just wanted to make that clear, but we certainly would like to, again, improve that entry on the corner of Wilshire and Alvarado, which would bring, two very nice entries on that side of the park, which both face the West Lake MacArthur Park Station over there. So that would be both the 7th and Alvarado entry that we approved a few years ago. And if we make these improvements to Wilshire and Alvarado, if they're funded, of course, we think that would encourage more people to come into the park. But if there's lighting that's proposed for like sidewalk or the street lighting, we can't pay for that with this grant.
What about path markers to help guide people to the rec center, Levitt Pavilion, public art, playgrounds, etc.?
I guess it's something we can look at. It's an interesting idea. Potentially one thing that could be done maybe as a signage program, signs in the park that direct you to there, but that's a very interesting thought, something we can certainly take a look at.
Okay. what about repairing the elevator in the rec center? Other improvements to the structure, which is a beautiful and historic building.
Again, as a part of this grant, we're proposing to make improvements in the outdoor park areas of the park. And I'll just kind of circle back to some of our thought process behind that. As we noted and Stephen noted earlier in this presentation, this is a competitive grant process. And if awarded the funds, we'd only have a few years to be able to implement those improvements. So the idea is thinking about the types of improvements that we can make in the park. Again, don't disagree that there are improvements that can be made all across the park, including at the historic community center building. The idea was to focus on capital improvements we can make across the park that we could be accomplished within the time frame of the grant and with the resources that we have staffing wise within the city. So that was the idea about some of the elements we focused on. Just to share with you, this is not the only Proposition 68 grant the city is proposing to do across the city. And uniformly across, we've been really focusing on the outdoor areas. Buildings are always a challenge. You start making improvements in the building and sometimes just quite frankly, you never know what you're gonna find. So given that the historic nature of the community center building, our thought process was to focus on the outdoor areas versus a project like that. But again, that's not to minimize that we 100% agree that a lot of the wonderful facilities in the park could certainly use improvements and upgrades.
Okay. Yumi, can you translate the text from Lauren?
Yes. I hope that more can be done to have more security in the park so that everyone can enjoy it more peacefully outside the dangers that have happened lately. Thank you.
Okay. So I think that, you had mentioned earlier there would be lighting as part of the, project. Okay. So
That's
how
right.
about-
And sorry, Stephen, just again, our idea would be to include lighting in all the different corners of the park we've talked about. But just so everyone in this meeting understands and knows and just kind of has some of the ideas that we put into that. One of the things that we do, our staff would do is perform a lighting analysis to look at the different illumination levels in the different areas of the park to help us make sure that we're designing lighting that is sufficient to fully illuminate those areas. So that'll be part of what we would do if awarded these funds and we receive them as we start to design and implement the project, is to really do that illumination activity to see what areas of the park are the areas we need to focus on. Again, we would focus our efforts on those corners of the park we talked about if those were funded, but certainly we'd like to see as much lighting improvements we could across the park.
How about ways to finding signs, okay, to show people where the pavilion is, the community center, the soccer field, the pond. So these are basically directional signs.
Yeah, I think just building on the point, previous comment that was made about, I think about markers in the pathway. I think that's a good idea. Something we can look at is potentially asking the state as a part of our grant funding for signage improvements. The one thing I would just note for everyone in the meeting is part of what we would need to do for our application is sort of specify for the state what that would look like and where those would go. But it sounds like a kind of a detail that could be worked out further if a project was to move forward. I did want to also take a moment to highlight again, going back to the lake improvement project that is going to be spearheaded by our city's Bureau of Sanitation and the Environment. And I know as a part of their project, they are proposing to do, again, along with all those lake improvements, a lot of informational signage about the lake and the water quality improvements. So certainly there are opportunities if we're successful in getting this grant at looking at a uniform signage program in the park, be they wayfinding signs or other things. So again, just want to note that I think that's a really good suggestion, certainly something we can look at as including as a potential element in this grant application.
Yumi, did we actually read off the Spanish question from Petronila in the
I
question and
believe
answer
so.
box?
I believe so. I will check
Okay.
and verify right now.
Okay. while you're verifying, I'll go to the next question, which is the hello, Allison Keaton from Levitt, LA here. Thank you so much for hosting these meetings and getting the community involved. Will the auto bathrooms be the ones installed by the pavilion? Just curious about the alarm sounds being so close to playgrounds and during music concerts.
Hi again, it's Cheryl. Yes, to answer that question. Again, that's what the discussion is about tonight. Just again, not sharing the ideas. The answer to your question, I think directly is yes. We are proposing potentially installing these Xlu automated restrooms in all 3 areas we identified in the park. Obviously, I think as a part of these community outreach events and others, if the community identifies particular concerns potentially with those restrooms in one location or the other, I think this is why we're here, to have that conversation. So the answer is yes. We were thinking about doing essentially the same restroom in 3 different locations in the park. But I think if the community has concerns about those restrooms being located too close to the playground or the pavilion, I think that's things we'd like to hear from everyone.
Thank you. So Yumi, were you able to translate the?
Right, circling back to that comment, I personally understand that you are all focused on fixing the park, but if there's no security, I think we as parents can't take our children there because we see a lot of people smoking, doing drugs, and when there's no security, we don't feel comfortable. We would like to see a change in our community. Thank you.
Yeah, hi, this is Daryl again. I guess just to sort of give it the same answer we gave before. This grant can only be used for capital improvements. So it can't pay for additional security or police presence. It can't pay for people or activities. So we think some of the things that we're proposing, potentially new lighting and other things, would help with that feeling of security, but just want to make sure we're abundantly clear that we can't use the grant funding for more security. If it's people security we're talking in the park, we can't do that. We can only use it on actual capital improvements, physical things built in the ground. So, and that's not for us, that's not us trying to say that we don't recognize the concerns, security concerns. Again, that's why I think we're lighting as a major focus of what we want to do here. So it's not at all trying to have us minimize the concerns around security. It's just to note that for this particular grant and this funding source we're talking about tonight, that's not an eligible use of those funds.
Thank you, Daryl. Yumi, would you want to share any questions or comments from Facebook?
Yes, we do. We do have a few. First few questions. How about more sports recreational programs and more swimming pools?
Just to reiterate on the grant guidelines. So this grant would pay for capital improvements. So basically, the funds would not be available for recreational activities. And I suppose Daryl can address the swimming pool.
Sure. So I guess 2 things is one, no, we weren't proposing to install facilities like that in this park. I mean, we weren't looking for a potential swimming pool as an addition to MacArthur Park. The second thing about that is just also simply that's a very high cost dollar item that would exceed the $8.5 million grant. But more importantly, I don't think that we thought that MacArthur Park would be an appropriate location for a swimming pool. So definitely hear the comment and the need to focus on recreational improvements. Obviously, like all parks, I know we talked a little bit about all the various improvements in MacArthur Park. This park does have some areas that are used for recreational, like our synthetic meadow that's used for soccer and our playgrounds that are in the park. But we weren't looking to add more sports fields or more, purely recreational improvements in the park. We're looking more at the pathways, the passive uses, and yes, it's a playground, but just kind of really focusing on improvements that keep within the theme and the current usage at MacArthur Park.
Thanks, Daryl. Yumi, Any more questions or comments?
Yes. Next question or next comment. So, World War II is the theme. Why not look forward and think about space? This is the best way to move forward. Rocket ships, planets, etc. We have enough war museums. I don't think you guys are on the right track with the project for the playground. I think there are better themes than war to promote amongst youth in the community for a playground design. We need more kids to be interested in math, science, STEM, not war.
Hi
Well,
again, I'll chime in. Yeah, and again, this is Daryl, and that was the idea. That what we're sharing with you tonight is a theme, and as I noted, that our vendors can provide a number of themes. So I know I heard in that question, space as a potential theme, and I think that's what we're here to hear from you. Are there different ideas, different themes that you think would resonate in the community? So we'll certainly make a note of the idea about a space theme. I'll say this too, for the purposes of the grant, we don't have to have designed the playground. So the playground would just be conceptually shown to the state. The playground will go through a further design process if we are actually successful in receiving the grant. But certainly things like the theme are not settled. It's there for discussion purposes only, more to demonstrate that we have very capable vendors that we work with that can provide a variety of different themes. So be it a historic theme or a space theme or a jungle theme, they do all kinds of wonderful different things. I think if we're successful in getting the grant, we'll be able to engage the community in a lot of different efforts to talk through that. But certainly, either in the chat box or the Q&A, or if you have thoughts or ideas after this meeting, share those with us, because that's what we want to hear. We want to hear what kind of themes you think would really resonate for the kids in the community.
thank you. Yumi?
Another comment on the restroom situation. The toilet project is ridiculous. We need more toilets, not for automated, expensive items. I know the automated toilets you folks are trying to implement. I've lived in Europe for 29 years, and this thing is a fad. In the consecutive years, governments lose interest in maintenance. Conventional toilets are easier and foolproof in maintenance.
Okay, yeah, thank you. Thank you for your comment.
And moving on, another comment. LAPD takes a long time to respond to these issues. Is there a better way to address any security concerns?
Again, this is just speaking for the department. All I can really say to that is just that LAPD is the enforcement arm for the city.
And just to reiterate, the grant is to do capital improvement, and so which means, as Daryl has mentioned earlier, lighting and any form of infrastructure improvement to the park. So this funding would not be available for policing services or security services. Yumi, anything else?
Yes, another comment question. Artificial grass is a waste of time, in my opinion. It doesn't help with the environment. It lets off a toxic smell when the weather is hot because of the sun. What if someone decides to light it up with a lighter? What do you guys intend to do?
I can only answer the question about the context of a synthetic material. So in the scope that we had presented, we weren't showing any synthetic additions to the facility or additions of areas where we were going to do synthetic materials. We're talking about new landscaping and pathways. I think there was a comment or a suggestion at looking at synthetic material in front of the Levitt Pavilion, but that's something we'll look at. But certainly your comment about the synthetic material is something we can take back as well. But just to be clear, the scope that we were presenting was not to include any additional synthetic areas, but we did hear a suggestion that maybe it would be a good idea to do that in front of Levitt, and we will of course investigate that with along with any of the other ideas that come up tonight.
Thank you. Yumi, anything?
I am seeing a few comments and questions, but a little off topic. I think it would best just to say and address these if people have any other concerns or would like updates about other parks or job opportunities with the city. Their best option is to visit the City of Los Angeles Recreation and Parks website.
Okay. So I don't see any more comment in the chat box or the question and answer. Just would like to remind everybody that we do have a survey in the chat box. And if you could please click and just answer the questions. And please feel free to leave comments if you would like. So that concludes tonight's meeting on MacArthur Park and Proposition 68. Again, this was our second meeting, and our next meeting will be this Saturday at 10 a.m. You can use the same Zoom link and also Facebook link as well. We hope that you invite your family and friends to join in, and we thank you for attending tonight's meeting. Thank you very much.
Thank you.